might as well. Hey, everybody. So, breaking the 180 here at the AMC Century City. We've got a couple of pretty cool reviews to give you to close down the summer. And funny enough, I say reviews plural because we did a double header today. Some of you who follow our Instagram probably saw that I posted a screenshot of the Transformers 1 screening room where we were. So we saw a little half-hour break in between the movies. It was that kind of day, but happy to report it was well worth it. It was a very good doubleheader.
Wait, let's say we ended up in the green.
Yes.
As opposed to in the red or even in the black.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, normally when we do double headers, we do it for Do We Recommend during Oscar season because there's so much to cover, so much we want to recommend, so much to get out there. But hey, we get to do something new, and that's fun. And let's just say,
two nice surprises,
two very different movies.
Very different to say the least.
Two
but
not necessarily perfect, but two that you can see the heart that goes into them. So I guess we'll start in the order that we saw them. We'll kind of, as conversations go, we'll dip into each film. We'll cross into each film because that's just the way we talk about film. So the first one,
Transformers 1. Fittingly enough, the first movie we saw today was Transformers 1, which, for those of you that are fans of the franchise already, you know that it's a prequel to the broader Transformers saga. Basically, it's to put it plainly, it's the movie where the two main characters, the two main Transformers, it's about how their friendship eventually descended into animosity.
And by those we mean Optimus Prime and Megatron. This is not an unknown. Since the 80s, essentially, they've been the two opposing forces, and
this was like the Phantom Menace of Transformers,
essentially, but better.
But yes, better. And it's not. It doesn't take 3 movies.
True, and ironically, and interestingly, so this is the first movie. Well, let me put it this way. I think everyone's heard of Industrial Light and Magic, ILM. They're one of the most famous visual effects studios on the planet. They did all the Star Wars movies.
Well, founded by Lucas.
Founded by Lucas, and this is actually their first ever animated film.
Yeah.
And this is one of those nice surprises. I would have never seen this, but when Alcy rings me up and says, "Hey, we got some screenings today," I say, "Yes, sir."
Especially to get away from this. Today is supposed to be the final day of the big heat wave that's been assaulting California. For those of you living outside of the state, you've probably been seeing in the news that we've been undergoing some brutal heat. So it was a nice way to stay out of that for the whole day, basically.
But yeah, it was a nice surprise. Well, first and foremost, the story, it's a very basic story, right? But it's not stupid, which I liked. In fact, I think it was better than Deadpool and Wolverine. In fact, I think it's better than most blockbusters. But it also had some sprinkles. It wasn't necessarily the DNA of the film, but there were some more interesting elements correlating to very heavy material in the real world, such as how collaborators work with occupying forces and
oppression. There was even a subtext that was, again, for those of you familiar with the franchise, you might find it funny when we reference how, there were even shades of, how anime tends to sometimes deal with very heavy, dramatic, and even political subject matter. This movie kind of does the same thing, where it throws in, the world icon, right? The city where the Transformers live. It almost has this metropolis feel to it, where the minor. There's the minor the minor subclass,
and they literally
of,
live below city.
And and then there's this ruling class that are the prime. The ones who have
Sentinel Prime.
They have the ability to transform.
And you know what?
But
Before we get into the story, I'm really glad you brought up Metropolis, because the first thing anyone will notice in this movie is the art direction is incredible.
It's actually a very beautiful film. I know it sounds funny, also because Michael Bay has basically been the directorial face of it, but this movie is actually very, very rich to look at in terms of its animation, and its construction.
Very thoughtfully constructed.
Yeah.
Even all our Autobots and eventually Decepticons, they kind of merge the 1980s cartoon with some more modern elements from the video games and the Michael Bay stuff. It's all meshed together to present something familiar but also new. And
also because of the freedom of animation. I was thinking about, and we saw it in 3D, and the 3D here wasn't distracting. It was nice and immersive. And usually when you think about this kind of project, you're thinking about the cliches of what they usually do with it visually. No, this one they really aim for that kind of broad world building that you get with anime, where you feel the geography of the place, that there's the main city where it all takes place, and there's a surface world that almost looks like a sci-fi Arctic landscape with beautiful twilights. And it's just beautifully designed. It's the best looking Transformers movie, I dare say.
Totally. And even the fight choreography, it did this thing which I really like, that now in broader animation, they're trying to use classic film grammar to stage their shots, and then when it's time to hype up the action, then the camera starts getting a little more fancy, but all the action was so clear.
It wasn't choppy. Like they didn't go crazy with the manic editing or use of
overdone explosions,
inserts, jump cuts. Like none of that was going on here. It's great you mentioned that, because I was thinking while watching the movie, wow, this movie has like a classical film grammar style to it. It's not like what. Again, because Michael Bay has defined so much of this franchise, it was surprising in a very good way to see how this one had a classic feel to it.
Now, ultimately, this is a kids' movie. It's not dumb. It's not dumb at all. But it's on the nose, right? The writing, it's not the best, right? And it was funny because of how good the other visual elements are. I leaned over to Alcine when the credits were rolling. I said, Tony Kushner should have a crack at the next film, because, again, sprinkles of larger, deeper ideas in the film. It's not necessarily what the film was about. It was more exploring the dynamic between Optimus and Megatron. But the fact that they tried to add some layers to it.
Well, it was a fun. I mean, and they keep it fun for adults and younger viewers. So obviously, if you're an older Transformers fan, you're probably going to go see it. But if you're, let's say a parent who wants to take their kid to see something this weekend, next weekend it premieres on the 20th. If you want to take them to see something that's that'll keep them very entertained, but that's got a little more meaning put into the writing. Funny enough, I mean, this one delivers. It also talks a lot about the way power corrupts individuals, and how you can start off on the right foot and with the right purpose, right? But then once you attain power, what does that do to you, and what does that do to your behavior and your psyche?
The cult of personality, and what happens when that shatters, when the illusion shatters, and how people can have different reactions. Now, one of my main gripes with the movie, like I said, the writing, it was what it was, right? We also need to be honest. It's a Transformers action movie, right? Again, expectations from what we're saying, don't go into it thinking that you're saying Munich or West Side Story, right? But we're saying sprinkles of stuff. But my main problem, especially with the character development, is there's a point when the character Megatron finally flips, and it's too sudden in the story.
Yeah, I mean, I think where American animation still has to catch up with anime is the fact that anime gives...
Or other international animation, which
Yeah.
we have a new summer episode about that, so we're not going to get into detail.
Check it out on our pages, on our YouTube and streaming pages, Spotify and Apple Podcasts. But I think where American animation starts to catch up to international forms of animation is precisely in the time frame that's given to tell the story. I think here we're still a bit stuck on that idea that because it's animation, it's primarily for families, for kids, so therefore you don't want to go too long because eventually the kids get bored and they want to leave, and
you don't
so,
want to make
yeah.
it too heavy,
which
is a little silly because, well, we've talked about over the last few years really amazing animation that talks about some of the most heavy subject matter we grapple with as humans.
And if you're a sharp kid, you'll probably like the other movies that we talk about in our animation special, Mars Express, Robot Dreams. This one, I mean, I wouldn't rank it up there, but it at least makes the effort to give you an entertainment that, has some political subtext to it.
You know what? That's a good point. They made an earnest effort, even though they're trying to tell this story about the rise of Optimus Prime and the rise of Decepticons. And before we move on to the next movie, I'll even say that the voice performances were surprisingly good.
They're pretty solid.
Including the comic relief character who I was really concerned would become unbearable, but I actually found Bumblebee very funny.
Yeah.
The way that they wrote the character was like the caffeine super hyper younger brother.
Well, he was kind of like a cross between an action hero, an action figure, and you remember that manic little astronaut in the Lego movie?
Yes,
he was
yes.
like a cross between
that
those.
perfect. Benny, if you remember Benny from the Lego movie, that's
He's
an
like,
excellent connection.
It's like those two put together, and yeah, so overall, excellent movie. The music score was also fantastic.
Very nice.
Beautifully done.
It's. I'll put it this way: it's a very solid time at the theater, even though it's a 1 hour and 45-minute runtime. Again, we have to differentiate between the length of a movie and the pacing of the movie, but it flowed very well. Maybe that's why the story had shortcomings, that paired with the script writing, but it's a fun time, it's a solid time, and you walk out pretty good.
Nice stacked cast, voice cast. I got Scarlett Johansson, Lawrence Fishburne, John Hamm. What am I missing?
Steve Buscemi plays Starscream.
Good. They sound like they're giving their all with these roles.
Brian Tyree Henry plays Megatron.
Wow, that's true.
Chris Hemsworth plays Optimus Prime, and towards the end, you can tell in the sound mix that they tried to overlap his voice work with Peter Cullen, who has been voicing Optimus Prime since the 80s. He's the definitive voice of that character.
A little proper bridge.
And did you notice the callbacks to some of the famous Transformers quotes, like "You've got the touch"?
Oh yes,
those little winks. Like that's how you do that, right? Where the audience laughed. They made a joke at GoBots and stuff.
Well, but it didn't feel like an overcooked nostalgia train.
Deadpool and Wolverine. Oh, I'm so sorry. The allergic reactions, it get them pretty hard.
Exactly. The movie knew how to give that stuff the fans want without turning it into something that's just about the nostalgia. And that takes us to our next film, which is also about nostalgia, but in a different way, in a very actually moving and nice way, which this was a fun discovery for us. The second movie of the day was My Old Ass.
Now, that is what the movie is called. I knew nothing about this. I thought this was just going to be one of those quirky comedies where it's like, oh my god.
Yeah.
But it's one of those emotionally honest films about, I don't know. I guess the best way I can describe it is that the pain of loss and the intense love of a person can lead to the most profound sense of loss and hurt and uncertainty, and we sometimes want to protect ourselves from that hurt, but sometimes in order to live a rich life we need to be able to go through that whole process. That's what it means to live a fulfilling life.
Yeah, the basic plot is that this 18-year-old girl who belongs to a farming family,
They farm cranberries.
is planning to leave for college, and while shrooming with her friends one night, she sees an apparition of herself at 39. And so, which of course when you're 18, 39 feels,
One step to a coffin, right?
Yeah, it feels like it's decades in the future, It's like when I think back to my first grade teacher, and they seem so ancient to me when I was 6 or 7, but they were probably 24 or 25 at the time. And it's the same when we're in our late teens, being 40s seems like it's like, oh man, I'm gonna be a grandpa by then. And it's a nice movie about how the younger self starts just talking with her older self, and the first nice lesson is that the older self kind of reveals to her that, like, no, you probably won't have everything so figured out and perfect by 39. While at the same time, the older self starts warning her about, don't talk to this person, don't get involved with this person. Don't talk to Chad, because something might happen. And it becomes one of those wonderful youth parables about growing up, about the passage of time, about how we should value our time, because the older you get, it's inevitable. Time just starts flying because you're busy, you've got other stuff, you've got so much on your mind, you're trying to do so many things. You don't have that freedom to kind of lounge and figure stuff out when you're 18, 19, when you're in those early 20s. Yeah, and
it is really about the value of time spent with people and the lasting impact that may have on you, and the fact that being uncertain is okay. That we don't necessarily need to have a label for what we're feeling now or what we think we're going through.
It's written and directed by an actress turned director, Megan Park, who really puts a personal touch into the script, because she herself is 38, and her directorial debut was in 2021. I had actually forgotten about this movie until I looked up who made this movie. She did a little movie in 2021 that went straight to streaming on Max called The Fallout, with a young actress that's getting some attention, named Jenna Ortega. It was a movie where Jenna Ortega plays a school shooting survivor, and how she's one of the least popular girls, but she happens to be trapped in the bathroom during the shooting with one of the popular girls. And surviving that kind of brings them together, and they start to get to know each other.
Interesting.
And it was a good. This is a better movie, but they're both similar in the sense that Park doesn't. She keeps it nice and simple. It's like one setting with well-defined characters. You feel like you get to know everybody. In this movie, especially in My Old Ass, you feel like you get to know everyone. You get to know the world the characters operate in, and
it doesn't have the cliche highs and lows that we would expect in this kind of movie. It
treats the teens like actual teens. Like, these are actual young people.
It skirts between feeling at least in the dialogue, feeling unscripted. And I don't know if it was or not, but it bridges that line between how Gen Z talks
Yeah.
versus, I don't know, more formal conversational interactions.
Yeah, like, well, yeah, it captures well the way Gen Z is defining things and the way Gen Z is describing things. And then there's that nice contrast with the older self played by Aubrey Plaza. She plays the 39-year-old version of the younger, version of herself, who is played by, let me bring it up right now, Macy Stella plays the 18-year-old version. And you can, it's nice that contrast where like Aubrey Plaza is still, the 39-year-old self is still her, but now she doesn't use the same slang, the same language from when she was 18. And I love how you get little hints. One of the way they interact is through the phone. And I love how the dialogue, and this doesn't spoil what happens in the plot. These are like mini spoilers of descriptive spoilers. You also get a funny little ideas of the future, right? So she's like,
Yes.
oh, you know, the 18-year-old one version is like, oh, you know, just tell me that I married the perfect person and that we have like a bunch of babies. And the 39-year-old self is like, what are you talking about? No one's allowed to have more than two kids, you know, in the future. And then, or at one point, remember you hear these weird sirens in
Yes.
the background. It's like, what world is what like if you're 18 today, what the hell is the world going to look like when you're 39?
And she
yeah.
keeps telling her younger self to not talk to this guy Chad. And there's a moment in the film where things develop, and then your brain goes to the cliche, like, oh, she's gonna reveal why, and they're gonna get into a big fight. But then when Aubrey Plaza tells Maisie why she didn't want her to talk to this guy, you're like, oh,
It makes sense.
I see,
Yeah,
see
yeah.
why they're going this path. And I like how it's kind of a magical realist film.
Yes.
And then when they reveal that that Aubrey Plaza is actually there with her, you would normally in a worse film, that would be like, well, what are the mechanics of this? But
And they do kind of explain it in a very funny, in a kind of funny way, you know, which is going to drive viewers to go, take some substances, but to see if it works.
well, I'm talking about at that last scene.
Yes.
With everyone, with the other individual.
Yes.
We won't spoil.
No, but that's what I mean. Like right before that, remember Aubrey Plaza kind of explains how she reappears. You know, so you get like a tiny little, but as you were saying, it works so well you don't care. You know, like a lot of the best, magical realist stories. The film takes you on the trip to the point where, I mean, you don't care because what matters is the story, and the story within its logic makes total sense.
And it's also interesting because our Maisie character, that kind of a bit of an asshole kind of character, you also think that she's gonna develop in one track, but she doesn't.
Yeah,
She
exactly.
becomes a little bit more open with things, but not in a way that seems hokey.
Yeah, it was not like she does a total switch.
Yeah.
Or it's more about how we attain some wisdom the older we get, but some of us, we forget that at 18 we were right about certain things. It's just that as life continues, we get a little more reserved, we get a little more jaded because of the things we go through. We get a little more cynical about certain things, and we forget that almost to have a healthy life, you almost need that nice balance between the adventurism of when you were 18 and the wisdom of when you're, nearing middle age, like that nice kind of balance of like, okay, the boldness of when I didn't know anything with the knowledge of when I've been through a nice chunk of life already. And it was a very nice movie. Very nice. I rank it up there with these nice movies millennials are starting to make, looking back like Booksmart or Eighth Grade. You know, these movies that are being made by directors in their mid to late 30s.
Edge of 17.
Edge of 17.
That was a very good one. Another one with a unlikable, well, kind of an asshole at that age, but then they come to not be so closed up.
Yes. Well, you know what? It's funny you mentioned that. It's like, even when you cringe, what works, and that's what I liked too about Dee Dee earlier this year, even when you cringe, you still enjoy the movie because it's a relatable sort of cringe. It's not like these people are unsavory. It's more just...
That's how people are.
Yeah, it's just a reminder of what it's like to be young, to be a kid.
And it's good to have that honesty about how we actually are. Again, without going too far, swinging in the direction, right? Like those really bad Netflix movies where it's like, right, that's not how 16-year-olds actually talk.
Or the CW stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's not Riverdale. It's not Sabrina the Teenage Witch and like those kinds of shows. It's not, what was that other one? Pretty Little Liars.
Oh my God.
It's not that sort of thing. This is the kind of movie about youth that you could even say is going to last.
Unlike Coda.
Unlike Coda. I think this movie, Mild Ass, people will be able to, Generation Alpha will be able to watch it in 15 years and get it. You know, I mean, it'll be something that'll keep going. You know, I think if I were ever to have offspring, who knows? They'll watch it. Mm-hmm. You know, when I'm a decrepit old man, it'd be like, they'll still get it. You know, I mean, they'll still get the movie. It's that kind of nice film about youth. My Old Ass.
And Transformers 1, a very interesting
combo, but a good one. It proves that good movies, you know, with a nice intermission, go even if the genres are totally different. Transformers 1 premieres next week, September 20th. My Old Ass premieres this week, this Friday. So go check that one out at the indie houses. Give that one your time, because I know most of you are probably going to go see Speak No Evil, which, quick 2-second review, stick with the original Danish version. Go stream it where you can. This one, you know, if you just want Bloomhouse, Grindhouse Mayhem, you know, go check it out.
Well, speaking of international film, we are about to record a Do We Recommend that I'm very much looking forward to. Don't want to overhype, but it will most likely end up, well, I do a tier system. Alcy does the classic best and worst, but I think it will probably end up, this film, on our best.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
I
have no shame in saying that this is, or hesitancy in saying that this is one of the best movies of the year.
We'll give you a clue for whoever watches us in our little programs. Spanish film. Last film from this director was about 30 years ago?
30 years. His last feature, full feature, was 30 years.
So that's our clue. And then we're also hoping to do a little rundown of the fall-winter season.
We got something spooky coming up too for Halloween. Something fun, spooky, and relevant in ways you probably never thought of when pondering this particular franchise. And you know what? It's election season. In fact, the debate was just going on while we were inside watching some movies. So we've also got an election special coming up soon with movies you should check out while sweating over who's gonna win in November.
Who's gonna keep dropping bombs on
the Middle East.
On the Middle East.
Basically, yeah.
But like that.
And pretty soon the whole world is.
Indeed. But until then, we'll leave our usual links down below, including our Letterboxd, where we write reviews on just other films that we're watching in our free time that might give you clues as well to certain projects we have coming up. We're currently in the process of research for, I would say, our next heavy-duty series. We finished our Chronicle of Man, and this one, let's just say this topic is something we're very personally attached to and based on some recent events.
Very heavy.
Very heavy.
But it's going to be a treasure trove, though. It'll be wrenching, but it'll also be a treasure trove for you true cinephiles.
From books, well, not just cinephiles. We're going to do books,
music.
Essays.
It's going to be massive.
So lots of good stuff. But until then, keep thinking critically, and enjoy movies, everybody. Take care.
Peace out.